This is the OFN Today on the Our-Lads Football Network as we talk San Francisco 49ers football with Cam Inman. He's the NFL and 49ers reporter for the San Jose Mercury News. Cam, nice to have an opportunity to talk football with you for the first time here on the network.
Yeah, isn't it nice? We actually have some football to talk about too. It was in doubt for a while there, but it looks like we're going full speed.
Yep, the only people we feel sorry for are those in the Big Ten, and actually, you're part of the country in the Pac-12 too.
Oh yeah, Pac-12. I went to school at Cal Poly down the coast, and so they're on hold too.
Yeah, well, at least we have the NFL and some college football, so it could have been a lot worse. Okay, San Francisco trying to do what? And look, it's if you took statistically, what happens to teams that lose the Super Bowl the following year, unless you're the New England Patriots, usually doesn't go very well. So, so what do you think? I mean, I know we always say, yeah, but this team won't do that. They're too good. Of course they're going to go back to the playoffs. Everybody's going to predict San Francisco in the playoffs and maybe even the Super Bowl, but it just happens. So how are you feeling about the team this year compared to last year at this time?
A lot better compared to last year at this time. Last year, there was a lot of question marks about Jimmy Garoppolo, about a team that had barely won any games much under Kyle Shanahan, and then they morphed into this powerhouse running attack, but mostly a great defensive front that trickled down throughout the rest of the defense, and that got them to the Super Bowl. And to me, it's a franchise that's on the ascent. It's not one that was kind of a flash in the pan last year, where you had a bunch of salty veterans playing their last go around, although Joe Staley did retire at left tackle. They bring back most of the whole roster outside of Joe Staley, Emmanuel Sanders, DeForest Buckner. Then they complemented it with some pieces that filled in for those guys and welcome back some guys that did not play last year that could have a big factor into this season. And, Kyle Shanahan didn't have his staff rated. So I think that really bodes well for a year like this year, where you want to have that consistency and familiar coaches, familiar players to get through what's been a most unique offseason.
Yeah, and when you have a GM like John Lynch and a rising coach like Shanahan, and you feel like you have your quarterback, there's a lot of optimism about, we're not going to be that team. We're going to be more like the New England Patriots. We're going to keep coming back. Even if we lose, we're going to keep coming back year in and year out, as long as we stay relatively healthy to our key players, including Garoppolo.
Well, that's the goal, right? But at the same time, they haven't done a lot of extensions beyond this season. There's a lot of guys on this team that their contracts are going to be coming due at the end of the year. George Kittle got his extension right before training camp, and that was one they had to get done. But they did not extend DeForest Buckner and traded him away, right? And Garoppolo's contract is such that they can cut ties with him next year if they want to go bring in somebody else, which they almost did with Tom Brady, allegedly. So there are going to be options out there at that spot. There's the whole secondary is unsigned beyond this season. There's some rising stars like Fred Warner that needs to get extended, Mike McGlinchey. So it's very much, there's this, that fuels a sense of urgency that they have to get back.
All right, well, let's start with the offense. And what does Garoppolo have to do to take the next step?
Well, I think just he's been very easy to pick on for critics, right? Because it's a run-oriented offense. He was 22 yards short of passing for 4,000 yards last year, and that was still one of the top 5 performances by a 49ers quarterback, and this is a franchise steeped in quarterback history, right? What he needs to do is stay healthy, because last year was his first full year as a 16-game starter. So that's number one, and he's been playing without a knee brace the last half of training camp. So maybe he'll be a little bit more mobile. He's going to have better protection from Trent Williams now on his left side. So, and he's going to know Kyle Shanahan's offense better. He knows George Kittle better. He's got a few more different options than he had last year, which should help him out. And I think, the one play that people are going to be looking at with Jimmy because of the Super Bowl is whether he can go deep to a guy, because he couldn't hit Emmanuel Sanders when the Super Bowl is on the line. They don't necessarily have a great deep threat, although maybe it's going to be Brandon Ayuk, the rookie that they drafted in the first round. Marquise Goodwin's gone. And I think that's one aspect of it. I mean, but Jimmy's so good on his short to intermediate throws and his quick release and his accuracy at that point. And, all these other quarterbacks have either the big arm or a dual threat ability. Jimmy never kind of comes off that he wants to be one of those guys. He wants to be kind of the linebacker of the group, right? He's kind of a blue collar guy that has the Clark Kent good looks, and people don't necessarily look at him as a top 5 quarterback. But just today I was on a radio show at 95.7 The Game, and I said, look, he's easily a top 10 quarterback. And it's not just because I cover the Niners. I've seen enough quarterbacks. I've covered this team for over 20 years. I grew up in the Bay. I've seen the quarterbacks, good and bad, and he is a good one.
All right, well, let's talk about the players around him, especially that running game, which was fantastic during their playoff run. Mostert, where did Mostert come from? I remember watching him the first year or two, and he just looked like he was struggling. I was saying, what's this guy even doing on the team anymore? But they saw something in him.
Well, what they saw was speed and a competitiveness. This is a guy that before last season, what he wanted to be known for in the NFL was the best gunner of all time on special teams. All right. He had great speed. He had great instincts. It's an odd title, but guess what? It's a third of the game, right? So that was his goal. And then, the year before last, he kind of got in a couple games. He did real well against the Raiders, and he fractured his forearm pretty bad. But he showed the speed. He also showed a ball security issue that he did not have last year. So the fact that he had the speed, he had the vision, he had the offensive scheme that fits him really well. He exploded onto the scene, especially in the NFC Championship game where he went for 220 yards and 4 touchdowns. He is a definite number 1 caliber running back on a team that doesn't necessarily need a number 1 caliber running back because they have so many other options to complement him with.
Well, let's talk about Jerick McKinnon then, because we know what Tevin Coleman brings from Atlanta and San Francisco, but what's the latest? We just won't know until McKinnon gets out there, I would assume.
Well, I think that's fair to say. He's looked great in training camp where they're not going at full speed and there's no live tackling, right? His knee has held up well. He is on the 2-year anniversary of tearing the ACL in his right knee. And he's not a guy that's going to be running the ball a lot as much as he's going to be probably catching it out of the backfield, going to be a third down back. But he's very confident, and so is the coaching staff, that he is the comeback is full go. And a year ago at this time, it was not, and they had to shut him down and get another procedure for him. So it really is a cool comeback story. 2 years ago, I thought McKinnon might be the next Roger Craig in the Niners scheme, and that he might be a 1,000 guy rushing and receiving. And that's out the window now that Raheem Mostert's the number 1 running back, and there's other guys. But he's still definitely a guy that can produce both aspects, rushing and receiving. And, I don't know how they're going to, figure out the rest of the rushing core, but there's quality options there, whether they keep 4 or 5 guys, stash some on the practice squad with maybe Jeff Wilson or JaMychal Hasty, an undrafted rookie. But it is a very good running back. I was looking at a magazine today, and they didn't have the Niners listed among the top, I think it was the top 6 rushing teams. And I kind of chuckled at that because they also said the Niners had the number 1 offensive line. And I said, well, if you have the number 1 offensive line and you're a run-oriented offense, you have one of the top rushing teams.
You got to love those magazines. All right, let's talk about the receiving situation, because a lot of injuries from this group. So what's the latest on some of these guys, especially Deebo Samuel, and also how is Brandon Ayuk looking?
Well, let's start with Deebo, because he was such a quality rookie last year that came on strong the deeper they got in the season. He broke his foot in June. We've seen him rehab it on the side during training camp, and every day it looks like he's testing it out more and more and looking pretty darn good. So I think he'll be in there week 1, if not early after that, okay? Brandon Ayuk had one of the most active, productive training camps I've ever seen out of a rookie wide receiver. They just threw him in there, seemed very comfortable, seemed very graceful Didn't seem like he was straining when he'd be catching the ball or panicking once he got it, trying to figure out where to go. He just kind of was with this ease that you want to see from a franchise, obviously, that had the greatest in Jerry Rice and have had some other great wide receivers. And I think he's going to be the next one. I think he will be ready. Again, if he's not ready week 1, then it'll be soon after that. It was a mild strain of his hamstring that kept him out the last week of training camp. They don't need to push him, but at the same time, we don't know how many actual games are going to be played. So I think there is an urgency to get these guys, if they can play, get them out there.
Okay, and Jalen Hurd, how's he coming along? Because, he was somebody. I mean, he was a guy that I thought last year was going to be a sleeper draft pick, and then he was taken in the 3rd round. A lot of people were surprised about that, but I saw what kind of a talent he was in college. And either way, it doesn't matter where you get drafted. It matters what you do in the NFL. So how's he progressing? And is he on, as long as he's healthy, is there still hope that he can be a big part of this offense?
He is not healthy. He tore his ACL day 2 of camp. So he's out. He will remain the mythical figure that you and everybody else think he is because he had 2 touchdowns in his exhibition opener. There's no question I got more than last year every week when I do a mailbag of how's Jalen Hurd coming along. So no questions about that this year. ACL, check back next year on him. The rest of the receiving core, you have Kendrick Bourne, who came on well last year in his 3rd year as a 3rd down and red zone kind of specialist, bigger body guy. Really worked on his body throughout this offseason. So he looks pretty good. He could start. Trent Taylor is a very interesting one because he's your slot receiver. He missed all of last year with a foot issue. So he is back. He might be a very high productive slot receiver. Dante Pettis is a guy that's kind of been in the doghouse off and on. Was in it off a lot of last year, was a healthy scratch in the Super Bowl, but he's had an okay camp. And then you have they brought in so many different veteran wide receivers through camp just to kind of, because other guys were hurt and you needed those reps. And if one of them is going to make it, it might be Tavon Austin. Although they have a 7th round pick in Juwan Jennings out of Tennessee that has a bigger body and is raw, but has kind of a little competitiveness and aggressiveness to him that the Niners like.
All right, Jordan Reed, he's had some issues staying healthy over his last few years with Washington.
Yeah.
But with George Kittle, of course, on the team, he's more of a luxury, isn't he?
He is a luxury, and he's a guy that looks the part that he could be a dynamic tandem with George Kittle at tight end if he stays healthy. The Niners didn't really bring him along in training camp until the last few days, and he came on looking every bit that he should, but he was going against kind of mostly some backup defenders. But he looks like a veteran tight end. Looks healthy. He said he considered retirement last year after his 7th documented concussion since college, but he says he's having the most fun he's ever had playing football. And that's a great sign that he feels very comfortable in Kyle Shanahan's offense again, that he was in his first couple of years in Washington. And it's all a matter of health with Jordan Reed. I think he is the big wild card in this offense, because if you have he and Kittle as your 2 tight ends, and they will do a lot of 2 tight end sets until those wide receivers are healthy, that's going to bode well and keep defenses unaware of what's coming.
Okay, on defense, you mentioned, of course, Buckner is gone. That's a big loss. They replaced him with Kinlaw in the 1st round. Solomon Thomas now gets an opportunity to play more full-time inside.
Yeah. So I don't think Javon Kinlaw is going to be the every down inside presence that DeForest Buckner was. He is a very big human being. And that was all we heard the first week of training camp before we saw him on the field. And indeed, he's a big guy. He's wearing DeForest Buckner's old number 99. He got locked up a lot in pass rushing drills against Laken Tomlinson and one-on-one. So people started kind of wondering, well, is this guy ready? I think he's ready. I think he's going to be a very good run presence for them. And then on passing downs, I think you're going to see Eric Armstead move inside with Solomon Thomas to get after the quarterback. Maybe Kinlaw will be in there. DJ Jones. DJ Jones is another guy. And then Contavious Street is a kind of a wild card to it too. But Solomon Thomas is in a contract year, number 3 overall pick in 2017. He added some weight. He's about 280 now, and that's going to help him take on some of those bigger bodies inside that he's had trouble with in his career.
All right, at linebacker, Fred Warner. He's the star. He's the kid that he's the one that really has a chance to blow up and be because Bosa's a great player. He's got some talent, But Warner has an opportunity to be almost even on par to Nick Bosa, doesn't he?
No, I mean, I love Fred Warner, but Nick Bosa is in a whole nother level. Nick Bosa is possible Defensive Player of the Year material. He and D Ford are perfect for what the 49ers want to do in their wide nine. But Fred Warner behind them, he really does have that captain leadership qualities where it's a different kind of thing. You know, through training camp, I said that Fred Warner is kind of the MVP of that defense. Bosa is the best player on the defense, but Fred Warner, he really brings it to life. And he had a terrific training camp. He went on the COVID reserve list, on Monday, and that was kind of by surprise. But he did not practice Sunday. So hopefully that's nothing serious because he really is a talented guy. He got some respect in that NFL Network's top 100 sham. I think he clocked in at 70. And so he's on people's radars now, as he should be. I mean, he's going into his third year. He's been starting every game. He's the Niners' leading tackler, all around a great guy. I mean, he doesn't hit like a Patrick Willis did, but he sure has command of that defense. And he's kind of more of a hybrid linebacker that suits today's game, where he can do really well in coverage, alongside Quan Alexander and Dre Greenlaw, their other top two linebackers.
All right, and every team has one of these unknown players to outside the fan base, and I want to ask you about Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, a converted safety, now a linebacker. Is that the case? So tell me a little bit about him, because apparently the news is he might be a player to keep an eye on.
He caught my eye about a week and a half ago, and that was one of the first, when you do these 53-man roster projections, they're kind of boring because you're going off of guys from last year, and especially on a team that brings back so many familiar guys. And I said, I like this kid a lot. I think you got to get him on the 53. He looks fast. He looks aggressive. What you want out of your linebacker, and a guy that can maybe be versatile, which is really handy in the year of COVID, right? Where you don't know if you're going to lose some guys. And he has the Flanagan Fowles is his last name, hyphen, right? And so he does have about 3 nicknames because people don't like saying all those words together. But he's somebody to keep on the radar. I do like him. He'd probably have to take the spot of one of these incumbents, whether it's Azeez Al-Shire, Mark Nazacha, or Joe Walker. So, keep an eye out for him.
Okay, the secondary. Who is going to win the job, or who has the lead between Mosley and Witherspoon opposite Sherman?
Well, to Tyreek Hill's happiness, it's still Emmanuel Mosley. He is the one that gave up that 3rd and 15 play in the Super Bowl. He has not given up a deep play at all in training camp, even though it's been declared an open competition with Akella Witherspoon and the reborn Jason Verrett. He looks he's made it through training camp healthy, which is big news because his career went sideways with knee and leg injuries, right? But Mosley's a guy that, Richard Sherman seems to really embrace. And I think that endorsement can carry a lot of weight when you have Richard Sherman, the All-Pro, on the other side of you. And not that he doesn't, defend Akella Witherspoon, which he's done in the past when Witherspoon got benched a couple of times last year. And Verrett, though, he's kind of a fun little dog to watch out there. And if he doesn't make the roster, maybe there's a way they can sneak him onto the practice squad. But I think you keep him on there. And they have a really good nickelback too in K'Wan Williams, who's he was out most of camp with a calf injury, but I think he'll be all right.
Okay, and if not, who's the backup? Is that Jamar Taylor in the slot?
It's been Jamar Taylor. I'm not sold it'll be Jamar Taylor. I think maybe it could even be Jason Verrett. Maybe it could even be Emmanuel Mosley. I think what it won't be is Jimmy Ward, the guy that was drafted to play nickel when Trent Baalke was the GM, and then Ward bounced to the outside cornerback, and then safety, and then cornerback, then nickelback. And he is home at free safety, does not want to leave free safety. They're not entertaining Earl Thomas at free safety. Jimmy Ward is your free safety, and he's playing alongside with Jaquaski Tartt's high school teammate back there at safety.
Okay, and Jonathan Cyprien, does he fit in somewhere?
I hope so, because I think he's flashed in the practices we've seen since he came in about midway through training camp. It seemed like it was midway through camp. He made enough plays. He's a vet. He said he does not want to come back as one of those 6 veterans that'll be practice squad eligible, that he wants to make the roster, which he should say. I mean, which guy doesn't want to say he wants to make the roster? If he makes it, he's going to probably be beating out Marcel Harris, a guy that bounced off and on the roster the last couple of years. So I think Cyprien has a chance.
All right, last question regarding the rookies, and that includes any that weren't drafted. Can you give me like a sleeper, someone that has caught your eye?
Well, yeah, I mean, they only drafted 5,
Yeah.
right? And so you take away the 2 first
Yeah.
stringers. Charlie Warner is a tight end, and out of Georgia, more of a blocking tight end. But you know what? So is George Kittle coming out of Iowa. And Warner's shown some hands out there that he could be a very productive receiver if need be. Darian Daniels is an undrafted defensive lineman that is probably on the bubble, on the other side of the bubble, probably a practice squad guy, but he's looked pretty solid on the interior. If they didn't draft Kinlaw, maybe they would have kept Daniels around on the 53, but he's played pretty well too. So I think those were the 2 rookie sleepers, I thought, that have kind of shown well.
And the special teams is looking pretty good again, right? Everybody returns.
Yeah, last year they went through 4 long snappers, 3 until they got Kyle Nelson off suspension, and that caused the whole special team just kind of get out of whack. Robbie Gould had an injury. Gold's healthy. Kyle Nelson's the snapper. Mitch Wisnowski's back as the punter. It seems stable, and I think that's what you want. They just got to figure out if Trent Taylor or Dante Pettis is your punt returner, because Richie James is he's on an injury list because he has a broken wrist. So I think they'll probably go with Trent Taylor because Dante hasn't been sure-handed, and that's what that job needs.
Cam, I appreciate your time. Twitter, it's at Cam Inman. And again, that's the San Jose Mercury News. And all they have to do is what? Follow you on Twitter, and they can check out your work?
They can check out my work on Twitter. They can go to mercurynews.com. You can go on to Instagram. It's 49ers.cam.
And you do another.
There's plenty of stuff.
What other shows? You do a show, right? A regular show?
On what? On
no,
Instagram?
I saw the what was it? You have the on your Twitter account. It says something like The Game. Is that a radio?
Oh, I do. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I do the 49er Insider for 95.7, The Game FM out here in the Bay Area, the FM's Bay Area radio station for sports.
Cam, I really appreciate it. I hope to get an opportunity to talk to you during the season.
Okay, my pleasure.
Take care.
Take care.